So, however, as Nigeria as a society progressed and evolved, we collectively realized the fallacy of all these beliefs. Today, we no longer condemn or discriminate against these people. They are embraced and celebrated as equal members of our communities. Against this backdrop, we gather here today hoping that a similar shift in perspective towards the LGBTI community in Nigeria would happen. We envision a future where they are no longer subjected to inhumane treatment, where their fundamental human rights are respected, and where they are seen as normal just as they are. The stories we will witness in the documentary tonight are powerful narratives of survival, resilience, and also self-acceptance. We hope that these stories help to humanize LGBTIQA+ persons, reminding whoever watching this documentary that there is nothing to convert, which is why this practice is so absurd and why it will never yield the results that the perpetrators are hoping for. By sharing these stories, we hope to challenge deep-rooted misconceptions and prejudice that have led to the harm against the LGBTIQA+ community. We seek to ignite empathy and understanding within our society, inviting everyone to recognize the shared humanity that binds us all. As we embark on this journey of enlightenment, let us remember that change is not instant, but it is inevitable. It is up to us to be the catalyst of this change, to champion equality and justice for all. Let us stand together as allies and advocates, amplifying the voices of those who have endured the pain of conversion practices and vowing to put an end to such inhumane practices once and for all. As we celebrate Pride this year, 2023, in the face of recent occurrences, let us be resilient and also find ways to live our truth, because we are here, we are queer. No legislation, bullying, or harmful practices like conversion therapy can change that. In conclusion, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the survivors who have shared their stories. Your courage and resilience inspires us all. To our esteemed guests, thank you for joining us and participating in this important dialogue. May this event be a stepping stone towards a more inclusive and accepting Nigeria, where love knows no boundaries and where every individual is free to be their authentic selves. Thank you again for coming. Well, let the event begin.
Thank you so much, Damola, for this for your wonderful welcome address. So that's our communication officer. We are proud of her. So to continue the event, I want to welcome our interim ED to just give us a keynote address so that we can now move on to the panel discussion.
Hi everyone. Unfortunately, Dr. Atsunola is unable to join us today. We had a family emergency, so I'm just going to read his keynote speech. Are you trying to signal me? Okay, great. I promise it's not going to be a lecture, but please try to pay attention. All right. Thank you for joining us today as we discuss how to eradicate conversion practices and promote affirmative therapy in Nigeria and also in Africa. We are at the tipping point where we can use current knowledge, practice codes, and treaties to build a more inclusive and welcoming society for all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Let me share an unusual statistics with you before we get into the present position of the medical and mental health communities on the pathologizing of LGBTQIA+ folks. Did you know that in 1851, there was a sickness known as drapetomania? I'm sorry, I'm not a medical officer or a medical practitioner, so forgive me if I mispronounce some words. So basically, did you know that in 1851, there was a sickness that pathologized slaves who ran away from their owners? It serves as a warning that in our drive to comprehend human emotions and behaviors, psychiatry has occasionally fallen prey to arrogance and deception. Variations from the typical in human sexuality and gender behaviors have existed throughout history. Unfortunately, mental health experts have frequently pathologized these differences, misinterpreting them as diseases or disorders requiring treatment. As a result, the religious institutions also demonize same-sex relationships as a deviation from the natural order. According to our research findings, religious leaders remain the major perpetrators of conversion practices in Africa, especially in Nigeria. All of the religious leaders from various faiths we interviewed believe that homosexuality is a disorder and a deviation from nature, and they have the responsibility to change LGBT plus individuals as God intended. Historically, gender behaviors and feelings are included as pathologies on diagnostic schedules for mental disorders. Individuals who departed from cultural expectation, constitutional psychopathic inferiority. However, between 1952 and 1974, there was a remarkable shift in perception, right? So basically, people have had different interpretations of what it means to be homosexual, and this has actually led to how we've arrived at psychiatrists believing that homosexuality is no longer a mental disease. I'm just going to skip a lot of this history because that's basically what it's trying to say. Affirmative therapy focuses on helping LGBTQ plus people develop pride, community, and resilience. It seeks to mitigate the harmful effects of stigma, shame, and low self-esteem, while therapy serves as knowledgeable activists against societal injustice. So, are there international codes and practice guidelines specifically opposing conversion practices? Yes, the answer is yes. Numerous laws, treaties, and practice recommendations can be reviewed as being against conversion therapy and in favor of positive therapy. The importance of the patient's best interest is emphasized in both the UN Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights and the World Medical Association Declaration of Lisbon. These documents emphasize, please, if you're trying to send me something, cancel it. You're distracting me. These documents emphasize that the individual's best interest and well-being should always take precedence over societal norms or tradition. Quality medical care is also emphasized, and in an emphasis on evidence-based, so it lays emphasis on evidence-based practice to ensure that interventions are carried out in compliance with professional requirements and standards. Furthermore, as stated in the Declaration of Tokyo, the physician's duty to cure, elevate suffering, and act in the best interest of their patients might be considered contrary to conversion practices. So basically, all over the world, different countries have been trying to mitigate the general conception or the general idea that it's okay for a therapist to provide conversion practice to someone who is homosexual or someone who has a diverse gender identity. So it's very important that what we are talking about today, decriminalizing homosexuality or banning conversion practice is not something new in the world at all. A lot of progressive countries in the world are tilting towards providing affirmative therapy. So let me just take the final paragraph, which says codes of medical ethics have been modified from international codes in Africa, as they have in many regions, including Nigeria. Violations of these ethical rules can result in professional misconduct, which can result in penalties such as suspension or removal from the applicable register. In addition, there are broad views that has been broken when engaging in conversion practices. According to the Violence Against Prohibition Act of 2014, acts of aggression, instigation, or assistance in infliction of physical or psychological harm on others are considered violations of the law. This raises the prospect of legal ramification for people who use conversion therapy. Advocacy and awareness are required to ensure responsibility in key stakeholders like legal, religious institutions, and mental health professionals. Practitioners should also be educated and trained in context-appropriate principles and techniques for affirmative therapy. So basically, if you haven't listened to all of the things that I've read, let me just summarize, right? So we are saying that, even from what Damola just said, there's so many things that we've had to evolve from. We've been a community or a society that frowned against having twins, something as natural as having twins, or something as natural as having been left-handed, for instance. And in the last 50 years or in the last 100 years, we've actually evolved as a society to change some of our societal norms, right? So what we're saying basically is, in another 50 years, we are sure that LGBT plus rights will probably be, it won't be what is being discussed right now. That is, the general, the public view of LGBT plus persons has been that it's demonic, as you're going to see in the documentary that we're going to show. But we believe that with the kind of work that we are putting in place right now, and with all other, the other activists that are working across Nigeria, we're hoping that in the next 10, 20, 50 years, the conversation would have progressed. We can say this and we have authority to speak on this because some of the research that we've done so far, for instance, the social perception survey that's been conducted at TIERS, has seen a significant improvement as to what we used to have in, say, 2014, when the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act was passed. As at 2014, 2013, about 98% of Nigerians believe that LGBT plus persons did not deserve fundamental human rights. But as of today, according to the 2022 Social Perception Survey, that number has dropped at least by 35%. It means that the work that we are putting in place is working. It means that perception of LGBT plus persons are shifting. People are beginning to see reasons why they don't need to demonalize LGBT plus persons, right? People are seeing the relevance why someone who is queer or someone who is trans, for instance, deserve their fundamental human rights. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over now to our host, Godwin, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Remy. So before I move further to the panel discussion, I will just give us a little housekeeping announcement. So if you look around you, there are people who are wearing red tag. It means they don't want you to take in their pictures or videos. So those of them who are putting on the green tag are saying, bring it on. So just take that into consideration as you take pictures. Also, cameraman, I'm also talking to you. So when you are producing the video, remember to blur their faces if you've already captured them. Thank you, everyone. So I want to welcome the panelists, the wonderful people that will be giving us very good discussion today. I'm just going to read their biography as I call them out. Okay, so one of the panelists we have today with us is Ibifubara David. Ibifubara David is a researcher. She has a researcher with a background in psychology. She has been doing psychology work for the past decade, and she's passionate about research and collaboration, using research to sort of do advocacy, especially when it comes to development psychology. So the next panelist I want to welcome to join us is Anu Jide Ojo. Anu is a licensed clinical psychologist. She's the founder of Us Therapy, with a vision to make mental health support accessible through psychotherapy, mental health education. Through her work, she has been able to merge intersectionality between client care to enable access for everyone and create safe spaces for healing, openness, and vulnerability in healthy ways. Please, a round of applause for Anna. So we have with us Dr. Toyin Ajo. Dr. Toyin, also known as the Moon Goddess. She is a restorative healer with a sole vision of transforming transgenerational trauma and interpersonal relationship among Africa. She founded iAfrica to advance restorative healing. She has a PhD in political science from the University of Pretoria and also a master's in conflict, security and development from King's College London, and a BSc in account from Obafemi Awolowo Ilefe. She focuses on empirical research, which sort of intersects between activism spent for over 2 decades. Please help us welcome Dr. 20 decades. All right. So the last on the panelist is a young, vibrant media professional, Timini Kayode. He's a Lagos-based documentarian, producer, showrunner, with over 5 years of experience with multimedia-based digital approach to tell indigenous West African story that engage, change, and curate public engagement through strategic storytelling and events. Please help us welcome Timini. That was a mouthful, eh? So you see, we have great people in the panelists. All right, so the topic of the panel discussion is right here on the board. The dangerous trial, addressing legal and religious and mental systems that enable conversion practices in Nigeria or even Africa. So we want to be looking at how does the various systems in Africa and Nigeria sort of come together to enable these conversion practices. How does it drive demand? How does it drive? Because, when there is no demand, there won't be supply. So basically, these systems are the ones that are driving the supply and demand for these harmful practices. So today we'll be just trying to dissect and how to address these systems and advocate for a more inclusive society by engaging across these three systems. So, I will start by asking the panelists a few questions, and then we'll see how it goes from there. All right, just a minute. Okay, so my first question is, this is for all of us. So I want to find out, what are your thoughts on the religious institution popular view on same-sex relationship as a danger to traditional family values in Africa, especially in Nigeria? Because if we look at recently, there has been the anti-gender movements are also always saying that the LGBTIQ persons are coming to destroy the traditional values. They are promoting pornography and all those things. So want to find out your thoughts on that.
Can you hear me? Okay. I think I'll just start with the fact that religious, values itself already, the ones they brought to us already, I would say, I don't think destroys, but it's already against like the traditional value family system by being nuclear. Or not nuclear, by being let's say monogamous, but like by being just father, mother, children. While we all know African systems, or we're all known from growing up with our grandparents and great grandparents to be very much polygamous and having different wives and all of that. So saying that this system does that is, I would say you're not being honest. That's to start with, because this you're already bringing something that is doing this. So how exactly does this happen, right? I would say they're not being honest. And another thing is the world already exists with these things that I said, like you say, pornography. It's what is bringing is like your everything they always say is things like you're not natural, or what exactly, or who exactly creates what is natural, right? Natural has been something that over time with the society has been defined by different people. So if a set of people have come together and say we are natural, we're doing things that make us happy, then that is natural to them, and that is okay, right? Like a group of people now saying that, oh, this thing you're saying is not natural, doesn't really, it doesn't really make sense if you put it, yeah, if you actually think about it. So I would say that religion really is just putting things together and telling us things that are also against what we stand for, right? Yeah.
Your thoughts.
Okay, what is natural? When what is natural is pretty much how good are you with conforming to the norm? How good are you with being subservient? How good are you with saying yes to having a father and a mother and a child? That picket fence picture. It has just been sold by the evangelic ministries, the churches, the ad groups, and all of that. That this is the perfect picture. Then they'll plaster it on a pancake pack, and then they'll sell it to millions around the world. A lot of the things that we see as natural are the things that capitalists have sold down for decades, and we've taken it as our own scripture. Meanwhile, when you really break it down and interrogate it, you see that it's literally like 4 or 5 people sat in the room and say, like, what to make us the best buck right now. So we need to start becoming more anarchists with these things. We need to start interrogating them, like, where are they from? When you say it is natural, who is it serving really? Who is benefiting from it the most? And if it's not healthy for us, how can we dismantle this system?
Yeah, so if you basically are saying that all of these are a form of power, people are just trying to control. So today I was skipping through Quora and somebody said, I have 4 heart chambers. It means I'm entitled to 4 wives. So, and you can see that even when you bring it down to the traditional African value, we pride ourselves in polygamy. People marry more than one wife. People have more than one husband. I think recently South Africa has also legalized women being able to marry more than one husband. And all of these things are just showing that people are trying to control people somewhere. So I would just have to ask Dr. Toyin, do you believe that these anti-gender views may contribute to an increase in conversion practices? And if yes, how can we actually work with religious groups to educate the Nigerian public about LGBTIQ persons?
Thank you so much. I think it's really contributing to, that's why we're here, because we're seeing the impact. If you know, maybe if you put 5 LGBTQI plus persons together and ask them what their lives have been like, you'll be surprised that maybe 4 out of the 5 have gone through conversion practices that has nothing to do with their choice, that somebody has forced them to do. So it's rampant and it's damaging, to this person's dignity and well-being in general. And unfortunately, the unequal power and oppression that is enrooted in religious system is the reason why we're having this conversation today. Because religion controls a lot of things in Nigeria, even though this is a secular country, isn't it? I think Remy Makinde reminded us of that recently. It's a secular country, but you see that that's not what is happening in practice. And religious facts, religious opinions are affecting facts and human rights in that sense. But it is bad and it's still continuing to happen. And that's where the kind of solutions that you want us to offer comes in. First and foremost, I would say we have to create alternatives. Yeah? It's one thing to educate, to do advocacy, but alternatives are why we're here. When you see the 4 people who are here, many of us have background in healing work. So aren't we going to make sure that we strengthen that? Yeah? So that when people need to go to places where conversion therapy had damaged who they are, they find a place for reaffirmation. Because you can still send them back to a place where so many at times it's subtle, the way that we invite you in, and by the time the messages are coming out, you know that you are in trouble already. Because you can go and tell people that they need to change their mindsets, which is what we're still doing, but it's taking long because we still have SSMPA that is affecting that reality. We have the way the society has moralized and binarized everything, still affecting a lot of things. So as we continue to do advocacy, which I have talked about before, as soul advocacy, know who you are, have self-acknowledgement, find the right support for yourself, then from within that space of power, begin to speak truth to power. Because we need to continue to dismantle
religious influence, and political influence that is not supporting who we are. And I call that act critical consciousness that many of us have to kind of tap into. I don't want to define what that is now, but I would say please look it up so that we know that from that place of knowing is where we are acting to dismantle even legal system that is not working for us. But it's a long way to go, like Damola says today, and we need to recognize that fact.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So, Timmy, as a media person, how do you think we can actually leverage on media to educate the religious group, advocate in that space? Because, I mean, how do we confidently and effectively do that?
Thank you so much, Gordon. Number one thing I would say is at the basis of whatever we're experiencing in Nigeria today, the media also has a huge role, right? Because I don't know, I think it was like last week I was walking the streets and I saw this kid who was reciting biblical paragraph, and the mother was she was so happy to like video the child and like put it somewhere, right? And I paused for a minute and I was asking my question on, on how I was that child at some point of my life, and how other children will see that child too and feel like, oh, he's doing the right thing. I want to be like that child who just sit and, because the mother is affirming what he's doing in front of the entire world, and it feels so good, right? And I am thinking about the trickle effect of this on other children, how other children see themselves, how they see themselves in comparison to other children who seemingly are doing well religiously, and how that affects their interaction with the world, how that affect their interaction with self, right? And this is where media also comes in whatever we want to push as against anti-religious harm that exists in our world today. I say it always. It could be as subtle as flyers, because most especially when we think about these things, the way they have been structured, the way anti-LGBTIQ message or capitalist message or religious message get to you. They get to you on TV, they get to you on street. If you don't have paper, somebody is screaming 6 a.m. in your ear, whether you want to hear it or not. That is media through megaphone. It's on the street. The message is getting to you, whether consciously or subconscious, right? And there is this question of, how does it stay here? Even when you do not know it's here, right? I don't listen to so much Nigerian music, but I tell people so much. I know a lot of Nigerian music because I'm in the bus, it's playing. I'm at the bus stop, it's playing. And indirectly, it's being registered in my brain. Lyrics, cleanly, I would know the lyrics, even if I never sat down to listen to all of this. So this points to tell us that what we hear, what we see, and all of these things really kind of like affects both our consciousness and our subconsciousness, and it really translates into how we see the world around us. So I would say it's really important that we see the media not just as I think, but also something of, if it's okay to say here, I'll say some sort of spiritual warfare, because when I say spiritual warfare, I mean something that goes into your subconscious and just stays there and guides your life, even when you do not know about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony. I mean, we see it play out even in movies. When you are watching a movie, the reason why the visibility of the queer community is also very enormous these days is because you see it being represented in the movie. People are becoming aware, and I think that's also playing a role in the perception. It's becoming normalized as something that is part of who we are. It's not an alien. So yeah, they're really leveraging on what we see, what we hear. I think that would play a very critical role. So I will move to the psychologists we have in our midst to sort of share some particular experiences in dealing with survivors. How do you think, what are the repercussions you've seen, dealing with survivors of compulsion practices? And how do we help them recover, especially people who have been subjected in these harmful practices? How do we help them recover from this? And how does it affect their general well-being in terms of people you've been meeting in your professional practice?
Okay, hi. I think the one that's most, I wouldn't say I will not say most prevalent because research, but the one that I've seen mostly in my practice and research and all of that is self-hate. So there's something that happens when someone has been fed something for a long time. So the parents might not outrightly say that, oh, hate yourself, but they'll say what you are is wrong, what you are is bad. They might not even say you. So, from people that have been in the closets, they're saying this person that you are like, that, you're that person, for instance, right? And they're saying, oh, if my child, God forbid, my child is like that, if it were me, this is what I would do. So stuff like that registers in the brain, like you were talking about, it's subconscious. When something is saying that what you are is bad, what you are is evil, because the churches use evil and they use like you are an abomination. So imagine hearing that over and over again, even without, even for people that are very, I would say, there are a few people that, no matter what you tell them, right, they're like, okay, but I know that I'm not those things, right? But it comes out subconsciously when they're talking about things about themselves, and they're like, I know that I'm confident in this, but if I wasn't like this, my life would be easier. If I weren't like this, I wouldn't look like this. If I was not wearing this, right, they would allow me into this space and that space. So self-hate comes out in different ways, right? In their day-to-day, how they relate to other people about themselves, how they relate to other people that even look like them. Sometimes some quite people I've met, like even in the practice, they'll say, I wish my boyfriend did not dress like this. I wish my partner did not dress like this. It would be easier for us to, blend in, right? And it would be easier for us to, get a house and stuff like that. So that's something that's very prevalent, right? But what should I say about, how to make the world easier, right? It's pretty much the first thing is affirmation, making sure that there's space for people. And how do you make sure there's space? If you own an organization, how many queer people are you going out of your way to hire? If you own an organization, how are you making sure that your policies that you have in this organization is safe for queer people? I say this because there are a lot of people that say, you can be open, but if somebody does something or says something bad or something that is rude, for instance, or something that's harmful, let me use the word harmful, so a queer person in your company, right? How do you deal with it? What do you have in place for the person to know that they feel safe in it, right? That those are ways that you can help, or those are ways that you can make sure that the world is safer for somebody that's queer. Another thing is like, things like renting an apartment to somebody that is queer without asking questions. Because if somebody else would come to you, right, dressed like that is not showing too much of their queer, you wouldn't ask them their sexuality, or that would not be a problem when you're renting it to them. So what are the normal things that people are doing, or what are the normal things that you're not asking questions for when it comes to people that are not visibly affirming? How are you making sure that the world is safe for this set of people, the same way you're making sure the world is safe for people that are cisgendered and the rest? So yeah, I think that's major thing. So I'll move to Anu to give the rest.
I think like one of the harm, like she said, is internalizing the message that you have received over years. Because like you said, it's not said to you directly sometimes. It is inferred. It is how you watch your friends tweet about certain things on social media. And you're just getting the things. At least most people know the stage of coming out where before you come out, you just kind of jump like, how do you feel about queer people? And then you just see like how they react to it before you know if this is a safe space for it. But before then, all of these things sort of come in and then it's internalized and you start pathologizing your queerness as opposed to questioning what they are saying. You're saying that the problem is I am queer. My mental illness is the queerness as opposed to this is the system that I am living in and this system is not enabled enough to empower me with my queerness. So I guess, and the repercussion of that is sometimes finding themselves in abusive relationships where the only solution outside a queer or affirming family is to just stick with what you have access to, stick with what you know, stick with any place that would give you shelter, stick with any place that wouldn't make you feel isolated. It's like at least they get it. even if what they are getting is even harming you. Sometimes it leads to substance use, because when your reality is constantly telling you that what you are is not good, is not godly, is not nice, is not kind, is not okay, you want to escape from it, you want time out. Sometimes that will lead to self-harm, because you're feeling so much pain. You want to make that pain physical as opposed to making it psychological or emotional. You want the pain to make sense to you. And sometimes that may even lead to like you isolating yourself from people that want to help you, because all your life, the people that are supposed to be your caregivers, the people that are supposed to be your family and your friends, they have caused you harm. So it's like, why should I trust you? Right. And that sort of isolation will lead to further harm, because just as you're harmed in community, you also heal in community. So I guess that the solution to that would be, one, finding your own family, choosing your own family, and that in itself is a huge privilege, because that may mean access to internet, access to social media, access to community groups and spaces like access to transportation to come to spaces like this, and also recognizing as a community that sometimes the work is not on the queer person to do. The work is in the community. It's in affirmative action, where you're specifically saying that this job, we want to give it to queer people. If you are queer, apply to this. We are going to give, so that you will know that there are people that are deliberately making space for you. It is connecting them to funding. It is connecting them to housing. It is creating spaces that will make them feel empowered, so that you understand that you have options. You're not alone. You're not isolated. And that everything that is internal that you think that is not okay, the problem is actually external to you. The problem is actually like the community that you're in, and the work is on us to fix that. The work is on us to correct the system and play our part, not on you to self-care your way out of it, because sometimes we put so much work on queer people when at the end of the day, it's not their job to fix what is going on in the world. It's just to heal and move through the world. So,
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, I've often said that there's one thing I normally tell myself, that death is external and life is internal. More like I use it to remind myself that everything good is within me, and every other thing that I'm thinking that is evil is just outside there in the vacuum and not inside me. So it's more like you just have to consistently remind yourself that you are good enough, just from what you've said. And we ourselves need to make deliberate effort to treat people who don't exactly behave like we behave, treat them with respect and dignity, because I think it goes a long way. Like when somebody comes to approaches you as a person, and the first thing you are doing, you are putting up a judgment face as opposed to just being human, like interact, just relate. That in itself goes a long way. So I would move to the next question. We've often in the UK, they've compared female genital mutilation, they've compared it with conversion practices. So I want to find out, as how can human rights defenders, in your opinion, how can human rights defenders leverage on that? Because I know Nigeria obviously says female genital mutilation is wrong. So how do we leverage on the existing narrative around female genital mutilation to eradicate conversion practices in Nigeria?
I'm not sure about leveraging. Yeah. When I think about this, leveraging makes it become more political again. Yeah? So it becomes political because, to begin with, you need to still go back to SSMPA. The existence of that law mucks up a lot of things. So I am really thinking to say, when it comes to conversion practices, from the angle of human rights and human dignity, is where perhaps the intersectionality of female genital mutilation and convention practices can meet. Because you are talking about dignity of this other human being, and you go into a place where your mental health and emotional well-being, is crashed to the bottom because somebody else is telling you you are not worthy, then it leads to some of the conditions that have been mentioned here. I think leveraging on human dignity is very important, and the fact that we still need to work on removing and repealing SSMPA in Nigeria and focus more on other laws that speak about human rights. I think we have VAP in Nigeria as well. And I'm realizing some of these tools have not been used in Nigeria, in my opinion. So it's just coming to my head because you still see that in some places, female genital mutilation is still practiced, isn't it? Because you still have traditional and religious leaders still equating a female child to a dog. Like you don't want her to be a dog when she grows up. You still have that in the mentality of the people. So I think we need to capitalize on human dignity, and human rights defenders may need to capitalize on this in their work. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you mentioned repealing the law. A lot of school of thought have argued because even conversion practices is still very prevalent in South Africa, where there is even very friendly law. So a lot of school of thought have argued that even though repealing the law or having like favorable laws for queer people is really not the solution, that because it's about the society.
It's part of the solution, might not be the entire solution. Part of the solution. Yeah. So since segregation, apartheid, racism has ended, don't we still have all of that happening? Because it goes deep into what people have internalized. And in my work, that's why it's important that we look at intergenerational trauma, because those are the practices that we keep on carrying on to generation and another generation and another generation. For me, it might not be the entire solution, but it's part of the solution. Because once that is out of the way, we realize that you have a country that is getting human rights in that perspective. And that makes it, gives a leeway into other things that need to come after that. Yeah. So it's just not one thing. It has to be multifaceted of interventions in that sense.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Yeah.
Okay. I'm using Africa as my, case point. And this is something I did recently, which is leveraging community-based healing, and even education. Africa is very community-based. You see it in when people die and people go to say, oh, we're commiserating with you, and like they're cooking food. And you see it when they give birth and we're rubbing the powders and we're singing. Doing that is making sure that even people in these communities, as much as deep in communities that don't even have water per se, right? But what they have is themselves. So how can you use human beings to, teach them dignity and teach them that something is wrong? A big way to do that is making sure that people in these communities, you're turning this knowledge we have, the mental health knowledge, it's very Western, what we learned in school, is turning what we've done or what we know into, or creating, resources that are very broken down to what we understand as a people. So it's, how are you teaching somebody that's the head of the community about support group systems, right? It's talking about things like, FGM did not just stop like that. People named it in their languages. So they were able to understand it better and able to understand the pain that comes with it better. So how can you help people understand the pain that comes with conversion practices, but in the language that they speak? One thing I did recently was, teaching people in the queer community how to facilitate support groups better. Recently, I did ADWB. So how can we take something like that, teaching them what being queer means and thriving with queerness? What does it mean to them, right? How can we show them that one person in the society that's like that, right, is a person like them, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? How can we speak these things? How can we take these resources and speak it in the language of the people? It's by teaching what we already know, by breaking it down and giving it to them. Eventually, when we have, I would say, the you know how we have here lodgers. Yeah, when we have one of those people understanding this and accepting it, it takes time, by the way, right? When we keep, talking to them, one person will buy into it. And once one person buys into it, especially somebody that they respect, it now becomes something that we can break down even further, and it becomes community based, right? And community based healing commences. So yeah, that's a way we can take into to Africa, because that's what we have. People, we have to use what we have, the resources we have, to treat it like how we treated FGM, which was the resources that were used. If you think about it, women banded together, they named their pain, and they now said that, but we do not want this pain anymore because this is what it's causing, and this is what it has caused over and over again. We talked about intergenerational trauma, right? So how is this affecting it? So just take that context into the core context and give it to them, and you see that things begin to change. Might be slow, but they change.
Thank you so much, Davis. I mean, we see the importance of contextualizing issues, especially, but the challenge we have within the NGO sector is the fact that the people who are funding these programs are not even Africans. So most times they want you to speak, and they say he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So they want you to play according to how they are thinking. So how do we navigate that kind of power? I mean, they have that financial power. How do we navigate that kind of financial power to build a community-based strategy for eradicating conversion practices in Nigeria?
So, I for one really believe in community a lot, right? Most especially as somebody who did a lot of my work without external support, all of things. I really believe in the strength of your social gathering, your network, your friends, so much in like getting these things done. For example, I'm able to know these beautiful people, and yes, the funder wants us to talk about how the thingy affects for example, policymakers, for example. And I'm like, okay, but my community need doesn't have to do with policymakers right now. What do we do? Alternatively, because of the running of the organizations and things, you do your policies, right? But for what you really think is the need of your community, you reach out to people. And like she said earlier, you're already teaching how communities can lead support groups, right? When I lead support group, when you lead support groups, when we all can lead individual support groups like that, we do not need anybody to dictate the direction of the support groups. What we need is to be empowered enough to lead our support groups, right? So, like I said, I really believe in community a lot, right? So we circle back down to community when there are tall walls like this that we can't jump over evidently, because like you said, he who pays the piper dictates the tune, right? However, we could also use alternative ways like community, right? So instead of using financial funding, can I say community funding? Does that make sense? Right. So yeah.
Please go.
And I love what the other panelists have said about community-based intervention. For example, what I've seen happening in many organizations, TIAS is doing it. Documentary makes a lot of things make sense because you are digging deep into the realities of the people and you are putting human face into the story. So that's one way of doing this. And funders are being on board with some of these things. And many organizations where I go to lead, I'm facilitating leadership conversations, I take healing practices there, where some people who have attended some of my session will say, where we have Ubuntu Healing Circle. Because when they were talking before about African practices, there's so many things we have used as community that's still there that we can tap into, like storytelling, music and dance, to be able to share our humanity within that space. I am because you are. So taking that is speaking a lot into mental and emotional well-being and self and collective care practices that we need to have. And the funding climate is changing as well because they are now seeing the value of some of these things. And I've been talking about soul advocacy over and over. This would be another way of bringing community, of bringing humanness yeah, or human face to the story we are telling, and taking that into places where they can make it available in different languages that other people can understand. But with all of that, we cannot shortchange ourselves and not be part of that healing practices and not be part of that healing, you know. And this is the kind of language that we need to echo back to many funders to say the money you're bringing in, we can we can use it in this way. Even if when they dictate the tune, they can see the tune we feed back to them and see if it's better than the one they are dictating. And I think we need to be able to see how we can leverage that and how we can enter that spaces and having our own program ready to speak to these realities when they occur and to seek alternative funding as well as, please, may I throw this in the room? I was in Kano recently, just before Kano, and the hotelier treated us so badly in that place. People, wanted to march out of the hotel. It's a business, using internet to leverage your business kind of activity for LGBTQI plus people in North. And there are about 40 something participants. But the treatment was so bad that I just sat there and I'm thinking, what makes it difficult for us to start investing and having businesses? LGBTQI plus allies, LGBTQI plus people, these resources, we got to be smart enough to have it and have businesses and have spaces where people can go to that is safe. What are we doing about that? I'm actually throwing this to the room because I know we have business savvy people among us because we got to keep on influencing. They've done that in so many other places. And I know it's happening in Nigeria, but I think we need to intensify that so that we make spaces available, resources available from within the community itself.
Thank you so much, everyone. So now I want to open it up for questions from the audience. Do anyone have any question from the audience? You can please the time to ask the panelists any question you think. Anyone? Okay.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Justin, and it's been a wonderful evening sitting in the room. And I just wanted to ask our panelists, anyone can answer, about what they think about decolonization, essentially. Because when we talk about all of these things, I hear a lot about when they mention issues around funding, and most of the times you hear people say homosexuality is imported from the West. Don't we think it's because of how we center the white people so much? Oh, we collect money from Oribo people. It now feels like they're sponsoring you to be gay, right? And most of the times when we also talk about mental health, like the first panelist from my left said, we talk about big English, ADHD, bipolar, and people are like, oh, since they're born us, we'll never hear this one. So why do we not start thinking about decolonization, even in regards to law? Because Dr. Toyin said that the Bible, even Bible, people understand and interpret religion from a cultural context. They will tell you to cover your hair. Some churches will tell you. So I really want to hear from the panelists what decolonization around therapy and healing would look like, essentially, because the one we have is so expensive. And
Okay, do we want to go now or I take more questions? All right.
Okay, so when I was doing my postgrad, one of my lecturers told me about this woman that came out and she was like, your husband, I was the one that slept with him. Your child, I was the one that killed the child. You're this, I was the one that this. And then he asked us, what was the person experiencing? The random person said, this person is mad, this person has been possessed. But that was suicidal ideation. And she basically wanted to weaponize the harm from the people around her to stone her to death. The thing is, all of the things that we experience, whether we call it depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, intent to kill self, whatever, didn't exist. The name that we will call it will just be different. So I guess like when it comes to decolonizing therapy, we would have to call in all the symptoms that look more like what we see on TV in Nigerian movies or what we hear our grandmothers experience, all the stories that we hear that sound like fiction right now, and say that this is what depression looks like. When this woman was saying this is the woman that left her baby and was stretched was expressing postpartum depression for one, or the person that was this was this. It's like you call these stories that we see in our day-to-day lives and still say that while these names that we have called them sound foreign, it's still the same thing. It's still what we are experiencing. We might need to do the work of translating the DSM-5 into the various Nigerian languages, and there's a lot of work to do there. But the work has already started, where people are exploring African psychology, where people are translating works, where people are, if you go to Aro right now, there are people that have therapy in Yoruba language. So the work has already started. It's not just a Western thing yet. It's just very slow and it will trickle down one by one, but it has already started. I don't know if the colonized therapy is cheap because the time is still, 1 hour is still 1 hour, whether it's African time or European time. But the work is definitely there and it has also started, but yes, it's definitely necessary.
I think for me, why decolonization is important is the fact that the Western mode of healing is so medicated. Yeah? And if you are going to be getting medication for things that you need to talk through, for things that you need support for things that you can use other forms of tools that are holistic for, it can actually affect your recovery. Then at the end of the day, addiction happens and you realize that side effect is even making you sicker, you know? That's Western model in the sense. But when you talk about healing, whether psychology, whether psychiatric, it's not Western. It's just the model that they brought into it, that they've introduced to us for a very long time, which is not even accessible in Nigeria. How many of you have seen mental health acts in Nigeria? The one we have, our senators have not even resolved anything about making comprehensive one available that can integrate mental health and emotional well-being in the way that speaks to the context of Africans or Nigerians. So, and I think this is where feminism or feminist organizing practices important when it comes to justice. And looking at holistic way to heal ourselves from into that and making sure that many practitioners, mental health practitioners, and are able to expose their patients to other form of therapy that will actually give them long-term holistic healing is very important in my opinion. Just adding to what you said in that sense.
So thank you so much, Justin, for that question, because it's really an insight for me to this conversation, and I will tap into what you had said earlier. So for me, decolonizing therapy, when I hear that, in pointing to what you said earlier, excuse me, literally takes off the word therapy, yeah? Because even the word therapy sounds like a lot of English, right? And I want to tap into, I don't know about other culture, but I am Yoruba, like storytelling at night, children come together, Paint by Moonlight, Ijala or there, where hunters, they come, they sing, they jive themselves, they inspire, they lift each other's spirits, regardless of whatever you had gone through. If you are depressed, they will throw you in the middle, they will sing for you, and all of this, they didn't call it therapy, but these are forms of therapy, yeah? That's why I say even the word therapy is a lot in itself for when we talk about decolonization, because we as, probably if you had explained one of these Tales by Moonlight, talk about how it could be as subtle as using stories show that, oh, this can happen, you can explore this, that. However, they might not call it therapy, right? Which is why I said in its sense, therapy might be everywhere when we talk about decolonization. And that goes back to who I said that earlier, to, oh, probably storytelling is what we could like to this form of therapy session, that thing these people did, and just localize it, you know, yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Okay. decolonizing therapy is not necessarily eradicating therapy. So I think that's something that is important to know, because while holistic approaches they're very good, right? That's the therapists that use a lot of it, right? The singing, the nature, all of that, right? And the arts that we have, right? But a lot of people are getting help by sitting down and just talking to their therapist and using the things their therapists are telling them in these sessions, and they're thriving off that. And if you give them artwork, they won't really be able to explore that, and they'll be able to understand, right? So it is, we're not, by decolonizing mental health or therapy or anything, we're not saying that therapy should leave and use only what we know as Africans. We're saying, how can you include, how can you break this thing down so that they can understand it in the languages that we understand, right? Because even I want to take it back to what I said earlier concerning when people give birth, when people die and people are going to their houses. Some people do not benefit from that, by the way. While it is something that we are used to, some people really just want alone time. So people like that would actually benefit more from grieving and actually seeing a therapist than just people coming to their house. So it's more about teaching people about how to incorporate the needs of others, and how to give help when it is needed, and the ways to give help when it is needed, and understanding it better so that they know what exactly to offer people in terms of resources.
All right, thank you so much. Just as we round up, just in 1 minute, what will be your advice to the community members? Because I think also we need to improve sense of ownership, especially in all of this advocacy and engagement. The community has a whole lot of role to play. What would be your advice? Just 1 minute, one person, just so that we round up. No, maybe 2 people.
Okay. So I think I'll take it back to the funding thing that we're talking about, and how we can help each other instead of always having external people, especially like white people, doing these things for us. A good way to do it is to become the funders. And I know it's not easy, right? But it's a ripple effect of somebody actually going out there and doing the work, or somebody getting an opportunity and using the opportunity that they have to do the work. So it's like you're a researcher, you have these grants to do something, or you have these, you have the resource to do something. What topic are you choosing? I know it might be easier to choose a topic that's not necessarily affecting your community as much, right? But can you actually, if you are if you find yourself using the resources that are provided by you, because I did to one or two, so how are you now using it? You're the person, right, to benefit your community, right? So that's how it is in kind of situation, right? There's ripple effect, because whatever you figure out, whatever you find out, whatever that the outcome of it, right, will benefit several other people. And there are queer people that are actually making big bucks, right? How are you also funding? Are you going out of your way to find organizations that are doing the work, right, to help queer people in society? And how are you putting your money into it, right? Your money, are you putting into it? It's one thing to come out and say you're queer, but like, how are you providing the resources in terms of monetary? Because they need to pay researchers, they need to pay people that are writing these things that we're talking about, and people that are going out in the field to do the work. So if you find yourself in that situation as somebody that has that, yeah, that's one thing you can do, right? Or break that chain of command and become the person that is, the person that's in that situation, but also being able to help others.
What she said.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. I think it's really important. And to everyone here, go to our website. We have a place you can click, donate, pay your tithe, so that we can continue doing the work. And thank you everyone for your attention. And Okay, thank you so much, everyone. And so we'll just start the documentary screening in a short while.
To heterosexuality. It may also be used to change a person's gender identity from intersex or transgender to cisgender. Sometimes this practice is forced on someone. Other times, it may be requested by an individual who hopes to change. In 2022, the Initiative for Equal Rights, in collaboration with an investigative journalist, examined the prevailing situation of conversion practices in Nigeria. The investigation brought to light the ongoing mistreatment of LGBTQI+ individuals by the Nigerian legal system, religious leaders, parents, and healthcare practitioners in the country. Our first stop was at the Mountain of Fire Ministries, MFM, where the investigator goes undercover as a gay man who has been brought to the church by his brother to undergo conversion therapy. He's been asked to get a haircut, without which he will not be allowed to enter the establishment. He has also been told that he will need to pay for boarding and food, as well as the deliverance materials that will be used during the conversion therapy, all sold at the church grounds. When the investigator inquired about the length of time he will need to stay at the church, he was told that his stay will be indefinite. It will all come to an end when he has an encounter with the Lord, which will signify the success of his conversion.
I returned with my hair cut, so I was attended to at the reception. I was allocated to room 002, Samuel Block, after receiving the 6,000 per day payment for a VIP room. Pastor led my brother and me to Samuel Block, where we were to purchase the items we will be needing for the service. The deliverance service kicked off at 11:32 a.m., well behind schedule, with a male and female announcer spelling out the house rules. No audiovisual recording, no conversation with unauthorized person, no ear attachment or skimpy clothing for women, no sleeveless tops or kickers for men. This was followed by a worship session, and not long after, praise and dancing, then a sermon, then some rigorous praying. At that compound, no deliverance seeker would taste food for 3 days, just water.
After the general prayers, the worshippers were divided into groups based on their needs. The investigator was the only one seeking conversion therapy, so he was asked to pray one-on-one with another pastor.
Seeing none of the group expressly to cater to gay conversion, I approached the altar for clarification. The woman who listened to my complaint motioned a new pastor over, Pastor Bakari. For starters, he told me to soak my body and soul and spirit in the blood of Jesus. After which he led me to pray. Oh God, my Father, on this mountain, show mercy in the name of Jesus. After 11 minutes, the pastor and I were interrupted by the woman who introduced me to him. You are not praying, she complained. Where are you from? Before I was able to answer, she continued. Everything we ask you to do, we are doing them physically, but they are happening spiritually. If you want to come out of this problem, you have to be angry in your spirit. The pastor told me we are starting the prayers afresh. He said you are from Ogun State. That's the only state in Nigeria whose name starts with Batu, Ogun. We continued praying until 6 minutes later, when a female announcer on the microphone told all groups to round off their prayers. Announcement overlapped the pastor's admonition for me to pray thus. Any power using sin of my parent to punish me, you are mad. Die in the name of Jesus. I noticed that people from all corners of the big auditorium were already trotting toward their seats. So I said my final amen, attempted to follow suit. The pastor dashed after me, handing me 3 A4 size paper with printed matters, one containing 31 prayer points for deliverance from addiction, another containing 21 prayer points paralyzing satanic decision, and the last bearing 12 points on violent prayer against stubborn problems and foundational enemies. At the end of the prayers, the people chorused a loud amen.
The conditions are very unfavorable. No food, rigorous activities, and fear-mongering. The tactic used is to wear down the victim till they can take no more. At this point, they will be ready to accept anything, even getting married to the opposite sex. Perpetrators of this sort of practices use marriage as a benchmark for the success of this inhumane process. Stories of survivors are identical here, saying that they just wanted onslaught to stop and so they agreed to anything. A survivor of this practice recounts his experience in various instances of conversion therapy instigated by him and sometimes by his family.
I need you to understand that conversion therapy does not work. It has never, it will never work.
The community survey conducted for the study involved 2011 LGBTQIA+ individuals from all 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria. Among the participants, 93% were under the age of 35, while 7% were over 35. Within the under 35 group, 51.6% were between the ages of 18 and 25, and 41.6% were between the ages of 26 and 35. This data reveals a troubling trend. Conversion therapy is introduced at an early stage when LGBTQIA+ individuals are vulnerable and still under the care of their parents. Disturbingly, half of the participants, amounting to 2011 individuals, have been subjected to multiple forms of conversion practices, while the remaining participants knew someone who had experienced such practices.
I went back to church and I spoke to, people I felt I could speak to at the time. And then I submitted myself again to deliverance sessions, prayer sessions, fasting sessions, going for vigils and revivals, really hoping that I could find a solution to what my problem is or was at the time. So I still went on. In fact, I went to redemption camp at a point, spent 2 nights there, praying and fasting. I went to see different pastors because I just felt that if therapy did not work, if speaking to a psychologist did not work, I just felt, okay, maybe God could work. I'd grown up believing that God is sovereign. He can do this, he can do that, he's a miracle working. I think that's the word. So I was expecting a miracle. So I still went to church, submitted myself to a whole lot of praying and counseling and everything.
90% of participants confirmed that their sexual orientations remained unchanged following repeated conversion practices. We found that many survivors pretend to have changed to stop the harmful practices as a strategy to survive in a hostile environment such as Nigeria. Despite the overwhelming evidence that sexual orientation cannot be changed, LGBTQIA+ individuals are still subjected to physical deprivation, beating, torture, corrective rape, and forced marriages as highlighted in the research.
Yes, I would say I have 2 types of experiences with conversion practices in Nigeria. I have what I call the academic experience and the professional experience, in the sense that I've read reports both in the mainstream media, the social media, as well as academic publications, where conversion practices experienced by persons of the LGBT community in Nigeria have gone through. And also in the clinical practice, I have come across a few number of people with who are of the LGBTQ community who have come to me either seeking conversion practice, wanting to get a change of their sexual orientation, of their gender identity. And many of them, when I listen to their story, they've actually had experiences of conversion practices either at the level of their family or religious settings. Some who may have presented themselves by themselves, or some who may have been pressured by a family member or some other important persons in their life to seek. So that is my own professional as well as academic experience of conversion practices in Nigeria.
While most psychiatrists are aware that homosexuality is no longer listed as a mental health disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, some still support conversion practices due to the criminalization of same-sex relationships. According to our findings, psychology students at Nigerian tertiary institutions are not systematically taught about LGBTQIA+ issues, especially conversion practices. This implied a lack of uniform knowledge about LGBTQIA+ issues among the pupils polled. In contrast, more than 87% of the lecturers contacted, 21 out of 24, acknowledged teaching students that sexual orientation and gender identity cannot be altered through therapy or other interventions.
But somehow, I don't know what happened. Someone walked into me and they saw me. I was like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And then the rest is history. I am here now. I have not killed myself. I will not try that anymore. You know, I think that was what brought the acceptance phase for me. I think it was during that period I knew that, okay, you know what, young man, there is nothing they can actually do about this. You can only try, but there is no way you can have control over what you did not create. I mean, I did not wake up one morning and choose to be queer. I mean, nobody wakes up one morning and say, okay, this is what I want to do with myself. This is how I want to feel. I want to be attracted to the same sex. No, I didn't do that. So I began to understand that, okay, I'm not responsible for this thing. Why do I have to subject myself to so much pain, to so much hurt, to so much, to so much hatred and discomfort and everything? I began to understand that, I shouldn't do this to myself. I deserve more. I deserve the love. I deserve the acceptance that comes with being who I am. So right after that suicide episode, I just knew that I cannot continue this way. That period, the dark period of my life, I call it, oh God, I don't know. I'm trying as much as possible not to, get so, I'm sorry.
The Cherubim and Seraphim Church in Lagos, affiliated with false prophecies and the tendency to promote doomsday conspiracies, often utilizing tactics that can affect the mental well-being of their targets, was not left out in this investigation. In this instance, the self-proclaimed prophet instructed the investigator to kneel as he engaged in an extended prayer session. Throughout the prayer, the prophet sprinkled various oils and substances on our investigator. Upon concluding the prayer, the prophet proceeded to deliver his purported prophetic message.
For 5 minutes, 2 seconds, senior prophet told my colleagues how they had turned away from God, paving the way for witches and wizards, principalities and power to grab the new quick, how he backed God, how he left God and followed the world. When it was my turn, he said, my dear son, look at what you are doing. He made the motion of someone who takes a few steps forward and several more backward. You are not moving forward. Instead, you are marking time. Even if you are given 1 million naira, you will squander it.
They want to use you to shame your family.
After giving me so many fake prophecies as seen in their appended videos, senior prophet explained that I needed a spiritual walk that would take place in a wilderness located at Okumaiko.
On returning to the church 2 months after the initial visit,
The investigator was subjected to more prayers and even more false prophecies.
Our return to the headquarters of Cherubim and Seraphim did not happen until Wednesday, April 20th, 2 months, 4 days after the initial visit. This time we were received by Prophet Madu himself. He led us to an adjoining building upstairs with a long classroom teacher-like table and several scattered chairs.
You're welcome. And here we have different ministries of anything deliverance. It's our own decision, not me, not only me. Unfortunately, I just said, let me see you today. And we're so busy. When he called me, I had to take off from good. I have to take off because if I begin to follow boss to work, I would have gone inside the cathedral. Normally, this is where our top elders see, but they are doing the delegates from all over the country. Like Abia, one, Imo, one, Abuja. So we're having a very one day, so I can't go to that place. You're welcome.
Prophet Madu, now joined by Prophet Johnson, told my accomplice to buy me a bottle of water and asked me to remove my shoes, kneel down for prayers. The two prophets got to work. Prophet Madu handed me what was left of the bottle of water and told me to sit down.
It's water. Don't share it with anybody. Don't share it. Because everybody has to watch. We drink it from now. Mostly, you want that in the morning, you want to buy. Sure. Mostly in the night, you want to sleep. Should be the last two. The morning and night. And we get things small, no matter how you have manage this water until Monday. When you are coming, if you want to buy, from now on you're going to live with consecrated water. You don't drink any other water. You can buy what is not mark a bottle of water. From now, we want people will see and rejoice.
The new prophecy states that there are demonic chains on the investigator's feet that need to be broken with prayers. He says the attack on his life and family will intensify since the demons know he has gone to the church to seek help. They went away with instructions of how to bath and purify themselves with consecrated waters.
Before God and man, when we are praying for him, as blood here, so blood of your own blood. As we are praying, as you are having a very black ring, spiritual ring on you, and that ring is only prayer that can make that ring to trust in your life. It's an agreement. You are chained as we are praying for you. Your two legs are chained. That ring is that until you enter grave. That is what training before God and man. And before God and man, why did you allow blood? Why did you allow your own blood to go on your head? It's what the Spirit is asking you. I had called this morning. Throughout I was coming, I was practicing with you. Before God and man, if you are married, you are paid to your wife. If you are married, you are paid to your children. If you are not married, divorced. Need a total breakthrough. As you are kneeling down here, they are chasing you. But there is fire. He has gone to church. Information has got down that he has gone to church. 7 days. From Monday, 7 days long break. You are going to see the sound of this. They are going to call you as a police. A friend of you is going to call you. Today is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they are going to call you. You are going to receive a call. Please, you should not ask. Don't have the going to write yes, but be careful. Please, don't tell them that you know whoever calls you, but don't answer.
A couple of days later, the investigator revisited the same church, seeking information about the deliverance prayer scheduled to occur in the sacred wilderness. To his surprise, he encountered another prophet who escorted him to the church gallery for further prayers and consecration. It became increasingly apparent that this situation was precisely what it seemed, a ploy to extract money. The investigator was requested to pay for additional items such as consecrated water bottles, special oils, a vial of the blood of Jesus, as well as special soaps and candles. On his subsequent visits, a different prophet discredited the previous one and proceeded to insist that he should financially support the praying prophets by providing them with additional funds.
How much we talk about it. That is why I use that message to say you have the people who are praying. What we are going to do is that if he comes, I'll tell you, we will share candles. Share us, give us that money. They can buy a case of candles. Pray for you. But when I work on Saturdays, so even Sunday, we say we will share the list and do the prayer. Yes. That is just the one thing. Because you have to tell him the truth again. Make a notice, there's another. The only thing is we share the candles. This one will declare, me at the prayer, this one will declare. So that's what we're doing. I can bring you all your clothes. You know, I went to market this morning.
Prophet Johnson proposed a shortcut. When he comes, once you give us the money, we'll share the money. We'll use it to buy packets of candle and rosary to pray for you. 1 hour into the wait, and with Prophet Madu not answering his phone, we approached Prophet Johnson for advice. Before answering, he led us to his car, stocked with a potpourri of spiritual materials to fetch the oil he received 5,000 for the previous day.
The prophet hands the investigator a vial of blood, with Jesus and other ointments. He proceeds to tell the investigator that his condition needs sophisticated prayers and should be handled more delicately than his superior is doing. So he suggests that he take the investigator to another nearby wilderness to say the prayers.
I told him that the place is too far. There is a place at Ajayi Estate around here where we can pray.
I told him that it's too far. So there is a place where we can pray here. This is for Ajayi Estate. We call it Lagos. So he was saying, the thing you need is that as you are now, you need sophisticated prayer. What the does, you do that with prayer. Sophisticated prayer is like agile prayer, where we do that. So you know, so you do prayer.
We told Prophet Johnson we were fine with the idea of nearby prayers. However, he expressed the fear. There were people in church who already spotted us. They may implicate him with Prophet Madu if we left together.
The legal framework surrounding LGBTQIA+ rights in Nigeria is characterized by several key components. The Criminal Code and Penal Code, inherited from British colonial rule, form the basis of legislation in Nigeria. While these codes do not explicitly criminalize same-sex relationships, certain provisions are often interpreted to target individuals based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Furthermore, the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, SSMPA, enacted in 2014, significantly intensified discrimination and persecution faced by the LGBTQIA+ community. This law criminalizes same-sex marriage, public displays of affection between same-sex couples, and membership in LGBTQIA+ organizations. It has been widely criticized for fostering an environment conducive to exploitation and blackmail, leading to a further marginalization of the LGBTQIA+ community in Nigeria.
Where does the idea of conversion practice come from? In my opinion, it comes from the same theory that women are inferior to men, or that white skin is superior to black skin, or that able bodies are more valuable than people living with disability. It is from the idea that we are not really equal and that a group of people should be persecuted for being different. However, I would like to state categorically that being different does not immediately make you inferior or less than human. Nigeria inherited a couple of draconian laws, and even though the same country with these discriminatory laws do not go by them in this modern era, our government is here to dissociate the country from these harmful laws. It would be great to have more progressive laws such as the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, which seeks to punish people who are committed to harming others rather than empowering the action of those who seek to discriminate against persons who haven't committed any crime and who haven't done anything to harm any other person, but the only crime that they have committed now is just being themselves.
While conversion practices are reported to be carried out by mostly religious leaders, parents have been found to be the significant instigators of these practices. 45% of the survivors of these practices reported that their family members took them to their religious leaders or mental health practitioners to change them from being homosexual or queer to what they consider normal.
The man that was there with the woman that I opened up with, or two, the man there was a video at church. So the man introduced me to one of the guest ministers, one of the pastors that came. So the pastor came in, I went into his office, and when I got there, it was all, how are you? Then he was like, hey, this is the boy I told you about, that this. So the pastor was like, oh, no problem. It's really, he kept on praying. Then he said he wanted to see my mom. And my mom went to him, and he told my mom that, can I stay at his place for deliverance, for the pastor fixed a day for me to come to his place. So I went there. I was not comfortable because I barely knew the man. So I got there, and the man had boys. The pastor had boys in his house. He had lots of boys in his house. So he was like, he's a mentor, he's a this, he's a that, these are the people he's nurturing, these are the people he's mentoring, these are the people that are looking up to him, blah, 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 blah. So the whole week was filled with fasting, prayer, drinking of anointing oil and anointing oil. I was drinking 3 types of anointing oils.
From our recent finding, we did identify parents to be the initiators of conversion practices and religious leaders as the major perpetrators of conversion practices. Religion is definitely one of the reasons or one of the factors why conversion practice persists. However, religion cannot be the reason for discrimination, because I believe God taught us to love and love everyone. And beyond this, Nigeria is a secular state, right? It means that nobody should be punished solely on the fact that they do not believe in a particular religious doctrine. Nigeria remains a secular state in which it recognizes the right of everyone to be religious or not be religious. So when people come to say, hey, my God has said you cannot be gay, well, it's possible, and we cannot argue against that. However, not everyone subscribes to your religion. Nigeria remains a secular state, and everyone's religion or non-religion should actually be placed.
Parents of LGBTQIA+ persons have been reported to also perpetrate conversion practices by abusing and rejecting LGBTQIA+ children emotionally. Under the guise of wanting what is best for this child, this approach is frequently accompanied by emotional and financial withdrawal. The intention behind these actions is to coerce the child into conforming to the demanded rejection of their homosexuality, with the hope that they will eventually be cured of their queerness. However, It is important to note that these tactics and forced conversion practices often fail to bring about any change in the child's sexual orientation or gender expression. Instead, they subject the child to further harm, as we will soon explore when discussing the exposure to potential violators.
I left from my mom's place. Yes, I think when I got home, she was a little bit caring. She was happy that I had embarked on a 1 week therapeutic session. She was happy I was back home, and I knew nothing had changed. I still felt the urges. I still did this. I still did that. But I kept on praying, because that's what he said. You cannot go away in one day, one night. I kept on praying. I kept on praying. I kept on praying. Then, fast forward to 3 years ago, the pastor still requested for me to come over to his place. That there was another form of prayer he wants to do. So I went the day and I came back that very day. So like I said from the beginning of this, I am a model. So he saw a picture of me that I took at a show. Then immediately I posted the picture. He called my mom. I told my mom, I have backslided. I am back in the world. I am doing bad things. I am already sleeping with men. I'm already doing this. I'm already doing that. Like, he had a lot of things to say about me to my mom. And my mom was like, oh my God, what happened? This, that. Then he said, does my mom know I'm a model? My mom said yes, that I go for shows and I get paid. And he just kept on saying lots of things to my mom. Why would she condone that nonsense? Why would she do this? Why would she do that? Does she want to kill me? Does she want to harm me? Does she want me to waste every of my prayers and all of that? So he requested for my presence immediately. Then I got to his place. No, actually he came to our place. He came to my mom's place. Then he was like, does my mom not know that models in Lagos, before they get jobs, they sleep with them, they tell boys to sleep with each other, they do this, they do that, they do that. And my mom was like, she has no idea that I've been keeping it away from her. Then it was like, after designers or photographers sleep with you, they'll pay you. So my mom was like, then he kept on saying bad things about it. So I went to his place. So he told my mom to go home that he was going to drive me to his place. He sits on the mainland. So I went to his place and it was all hugs and kisses and all of, we'll pray, we'll wash away the whole thing, we'll not do this. Then he forbade me from ever being a model or pursuing any career outside school and church. And my mom agreed that I was not going to do anything. Last year, he came back, he came to our church, he came to my mom, he was happy. He said he was happy to see her. He was happy to see me, blah, 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 blah. Then he came to my mom. He said he was traveling to Canada last year, that he would like to take me along with him so I can have a fresh breath, fresh this, fresh that. And my mom was happy. Like, that was an opportunity for her, for me as well. A part of me was happy, a part of me was not happy, because I knew what was in for me if I should give in to anything he's saying. So he was like, I should follow him to his house. He wants to take my measurements, he wants to do this, wants to do my thumbprints, my passport, and all of that. So when I got there, he was like, how are you? He told me to park for 3 days. So he was like, how are you? You look so good, you look better, you've added weight. Like, his house was still filled with boys. So when I go in, it was like turning me, touching me, like your laps are thick already, your cheeks are out already, you've grown, you've done this, you've done that, you've done that. I was like, thank you, sir. I was uncomfortable, but I was like, thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Then he was like, who am I seeing at the moment? Like, am I seeing anybody at the moment? I should not lie to him. I should be honest with him. Who was I seeing at the moment? Was he a guy, a girl? Then I was like, it's a girl. I'm seeing a girl at the moment. And he was like, okay, no problem. What's her name? Then I showed him pictures. And he was like, he knows very well that there's always a guy around. Then he requested for my phone, went through my Instagram, and he saw that I blocked him on Instagram. He wasn't seeing my recent jobs, my recent shows and photo shoots. And he was like, oh my God, you've done this show, you were in this show, you were in this show, you were in this show. Then at night when I went to the bedroom he had assigned to me to sleep in, when I got there, I switched off the lights. Then I think in the middle of the night, he came in, but I heard the door open. I was scared, like, what's happening? Who's there? So I switched on the lights. It was the pastor standing right at the door. He was like, shh, go back to sleep. I'm not here to disturb you. I'm not here to do this. I'm not here to do that. Then I was like, okay. Then he switched off the light and he walked towards my bed and laid on me. At that moment, I was trying to process what was happening. Like, why did he just lay on me? It was hard. It was very, very hard. He laid on me. He was touching me. He was kissing my neck. He was licking my neck. And I was like, Pastor, like, Daddy, what's happening? He was like, nothing, son, just relax. Just relax. Then he kept on touching me. He was touching me aggressively, putting his hand under my pants, pressing me, and memories just started coming in. I don't know whatever happened, but the slightest things that happened to me, I refer it back to my uncle. Then he started touching me. I was like, what's happening? What's happening at this moment? I don't understand. And he was like, why am I behaving like I don't know what he's trying to do here? Why am I behaving like a kid? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? I know what he wants, of course. And I was like, Daddy, I don't know. Then he kept on touching me. Then I sat up. I said, I'm not doing anything with you today or never. Then he was like, oh, okay, no problem. Then he stormed out of the room angrily.
So if I had the opportunity to speak to parents who are considering subjecting their children to conversion therapy, just know that first of all, you're exposing your vulnerable child to whatever form of abuse the person who tells you that they will change your child's sexual orientation wants to met out, because it's not possible. Scientifically, it's been shown that sexual orientation cannot be changed, and it's not a mental problem, and it's not spiritual possession. So whatever you're doing now is just exposing your child to abuse and harm, because in my own case, they didn't use physical attributes, but in many places, they use things like hot candle wax, they tie up your kid for days. Like, you're exposing your child to torture for no reason, because after your child goes through that harrowing and the violent situation, they will still not be cured, because there is no cure. What you can do is support your child through it and be there for them so that they don't fall into the wrong hands on the streets, trying to find information that you should be providing for them about their sexuality, about their gender identity and expression and sex characteristics and so on. So yes, I think that's my message to you. Just don't do it. It doesn't work.
According to our research findings, conversion practices are predominantly carried out by religious institutions. Consequently, our investigation has directed our attention to Islam, one of the largest religious institutions in Nigeria. In order to obtain first-hand information, our investigators also visited a mosque and willingly subjected themselves to the conversion practices that are offered within the Islamic faith. The investigator visited a mosque in Lagos, where they encountered a cleric who held firm opinions regarding the condition of homosexuality. He attributed this condition to the Americas, but assured them that he could provide assistance. According to his claim, the most effective method to cure these desires was to combine prayers with sacrifices. During their second visit, the cleric presented a bottle containing the yellow liquid and proceeded to explain its usage.
He will bathe with this tonight, slowly from the head down to the soles of my feet, all very slowly. And that is after locking the bathroom door so that nobody interrupts him while at it. When you are done, you won't wear your clothes immediately. You wait for the substance to properly sink into your body. It is possible you have some dreams, Rasak said. When you wake up, let me know the dream. As for the liquid, you will go and empty it into a dish. All the evil and burden on you will go away. Having given us a day-one impression that his work was all about the sacrifice material we paid for, it surprised us to hear Razak talk about another round of players at Fulala Beach, Ajah, Lagos. Notwithstanding, my dad and I showed up at the beach on Saturday, July 2nd, as at the break of dawn, to be joined by Razak and a much darker but similar middle-aged fellow, who later claimed to have had a dream about me.
As seen in the interaction with the cherubim and seraphim prophets, and just now in the video, the perpetrators have no issues double-crossing each other in their relentless pursuit of monetary gain. Indeed, as the saying goes, there is no honor amongst thieves. religious leaders target vulnerable and unsuspecting victims, fully aware that conversion therapy is ineffective. In certain instances, their intention was never to provide a cure. They are solely motivated by financial gain, exploiting the desperate and innocent individuals who seek their help.
The two men walked towards the sea, and after fiddling with their tesbah and mumbling for 10 odd minutes, invited me to unlace my shoe and join them. Start saying all the things you want, Razak told me. After a while, we retired to a blue mat, placed some 50 meters behind us by the gatekeeper. Razak handed me a piece of white clothes tied around a piece of granite, all bound by a white wool. Again, he told me to say what I wanted while the group kept fiddling with their tesbah and licking their lips without saying anything in particular. After the prayers, Razak asked me to fling the stone cloth into the sea. Can you do it yourself or should I help you? He asked. Next, he loosened the first sachet of sugar and salt, 2 each that he had told us to come with, and told me to empty them into the rising waves. Start asking for all you want, he said again. We are in a place of power. Anything you say here will come to pass. Nobody knows how the sea came to be. It's God doing it. Therefore, nobody knows the limit of the power available here. While I pull up my shoes as we finish, the stack accomplice motions me over to tell me a long story about how he had been praying for me. How 5 of them did not work with Razak and how he was brought in because he dreamed that a Christian was the subject of Razak's recent commitment and how I needed to show gratitude with cash. He told me that Razak, being a senior imam, would not want to personally make the request. However, once Razak spotted me counting the money, he stepped forward and invited to receive it himself, 10,000 naira. Razak said we should expect to hear from him as soon as the conversion he was currently processing, but we blocked his number on all communication channels, saying that future conversion would be a rehash of current ones. We knew it was all a cycle, and we sensed it was the right time to bring it to a close.
What are some of the ways that we can prevent conversion practice? First of all, recognize that LGBT plus persons are humans, right? And that their fundamental human rights needs to be protected. The second thing I would say is that the government needs to ban conversion practices or intersex gender mutilation. 98% of the participants of the research that we conducted said conversion practice doesn't work. Even the religious leaders that we spoke to cannot categorically pinpoint a person who conversion practice has worked on. It simply doesn't work, and there's really no need to continue to put people through a huge mental health risk or make them go through starvation, make them go through isolation from their family for something that simply just doesn't work.
Even the experience I had when I was going through that, like dramatizing being delivered and whatnot, it was the drama that made me feel even more stained, even more problematic, because if I'm rolling about and I'm feeling all this, then definitely that means that there was something wrong with me. But hey, now I know better, and every day is a step back, like is a step in unlearning internalized homophobia, and I'm looking forward to a time when I'm completely free.
Nigeria is a signatory to international treaties and resolutions that impact LGBTQIA+ rights, including UN treaties, African Commission Resolution 275, and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. These treaties recognize principles of equality, non-discrimination, and the right to privacy relevant to LGBTQIA+ rights. However, Nigeria's domestic laws, exemplified by the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, SSMPA, contradict these principles, leading to marginalization and persecution of the LGBTQIA+ community. Enforcement of international standards in Nigeria remain limited, creating a gap between global expectations and the current state of LGBTQIA+ rights in the country.
My recommendation to the Nigerian government would be to recognize discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity in the Constitution. If the Constitution remains the grand norm, that is the fundamental law binding all of our laws and all of our conduct in the country, I believe that the starting point would be to recognize discrimination in the Constitution, that no one should be discriminated on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. This fine line in print would actually help to start the work of decriminalizing discriminatory laws that fight against LGBT plus rights. The second thing I'm going to say is that we all need to come together to protect LGBT people. You may think that you are not queer or this doesn't affect you, but one way or the other, it actually affects us all. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Conversion practices inflict not only physical torture, but also severe mental health consequences on the LGBTQIA+ individuals. Survivors have reported experiencing emotional, physical, and psychological harm throughout the process, leading to increased depression, anxiety, guilt, and overwhelming feelings of shame. The conflict between religious beliefs, such as the fear of going to heaven or hell, and self-acceptance, can result in rejection from family and friends. Survivors also suffer from heightened suicidal tendencies, along with other mental health disorders, including addiction and self-destructive behaviors. Additionally, they experience trauma, grief, internalized homophobia, loss of purpose, diminished self-esteem, and difficulty forming meaningful connections.
Trust me when I say that conversion therapy does not work. It has never worked, and it will never work. It cannot. I mean, it did not work on me, and I believe there are several people out there that have also undergone these therapies, and it still did not produce any results. Conversion therapy will not produce any results. If there is a parent that has a core child, I would just say, do not subject your children to so much pain, to so much hurt, to so much. It's a lot to bear. Trust me, it's a lot to hold in. Maybe I understand how you feel as a parent having a queer child, but I believe what a child needs is your love and acceptance and your support. I know you don't understand it. You don't know what it is. Nobody does. My parents did not understand it. They don't know what it is when they took me for conversion, regardless, because they felt that was the best thing they could do for me. But look at me. Everything a queer person you have in your space needs is your love, your support, and your respect. And just live and let's live, really.
To address and eradicate harmful practices in Nigeria, we recommend societal and legal reforms, including raising awareness among religious leaders and families for acceptance of LGBTQIA+ individuals, enforcing laws to protect against violence and torture, prohibiting conversion practices, implementing regulations to prevent professionals from engaging in such practices, and introducing sexuality and gender identity studies in educational curricula. These measures aim to create an inclusive society, safeguard the rights of LGBTQIA+ individuals, and ensure ethical standards in professional practices.
Thank you everyone for your patience. And I want to open it 10 minutes for any comments anyone has about
In the last 8 years,
do anyone have comments? Just we take some comments or questions before we leave.
Okay, hi. So my comments would be that the documentary has subtitles, or it to have subtitles, so it's accessible to people that living with hearing disability. That's it, and to check for typos too. Sophie, that's all.
Thank you. All right, noted. Any other comment? All right, please. We have after party and refreshment. So, and as you are leaving, please remember to drop your tags with the ushers.
Okay, so it's a good one, but I feel that subsequently we should also consider the traditional aspect of conversion therapy. Yeah, this was just based on religion, but we should do the traditional too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Any other comment? Oh.
I just want to say a big thank you to contributors on the project. I know it could be hard to share individual stories. Those stories help understand the true nature and the non-fiction side of this reality. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Do we have any? Oh.
No, let's just. No one is problematic. Okay, thank you so much, TS, for this wonderful expose. And I also just wanted to highlight another form of conversion, because when we talk about conversion, it's mostly not always very physically violent. It could be emotional, it could be in form of coercion. And while we are also talking about conversion therapy for the community, I would also recommend that the community does not also in itself engage in conversion therapy, right? Because most of the times we've seen, I've heard and seen a lot of queer people say, oh, they give somebody money to become gay and all of that. And I also think if we're talking about conversion therapy, we should also not perpetrate what we speak against. If someone says they are not queer, I think you should leave them alone. And this might sound very problematic, but I also think it's something that happens in the community. So I think we should also not be the harm that we are trying to fight against. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your contribution. And thank you, Tears, for this amazing film. You probably won't see the work it took to get this done. And when it comes to other forms of conversion therapy, I mean, I think there's a lot of work. This should say it's just a step. It's not everything that's covered, but it's a step in a particular direction. And one of the things I want to speak to is in our community, I know that the laws do not support our sexuality, our sexual orientation and all that. But at some point we will need to put faces to this, the things that we talk about. I know that, yeah, they would say it's very risky and all of that, but we should start moving to that point where we're able to stand up for what we believe and who we are. Because when we continue to have these conversations, we hear people say, it doesn't exist. Who did it happen to? What is your name? Where are you? I think we should continue. I'm proud of all the people on this project. We should also continue to tell our stories. Sometimes you call for people and nobody comes out. And it's like, okay, you said this is a problem you want to attack, and then nobody is coming out to be in the film. Somehow, some friend of mine made a trans film, and everybody in the film is straight. And I asked, why is everybody straight? He said, nobody agreed come out. So these are the issues for us filmmakers. We continue to have the problem of representation and visibility. And trust me, we go back to Stonewall all the way to look for pictures. If we begin to look for pictures of gay Nigeria, older gay, we probably won't find it anywhere. It's not like they did not exist, but because there's a lack of documentation, because people in our community are afraid of being documented. So as we continue to push and do this work, please let's try and, make it a little bit easy for us. Thank you.
Sorry, thanks. It's a wonderful documentary. And in line with what Presh just said, I want to recommend two things. Anyone has seen Disclosure on Netflix? If you've not, please watch it. It buttresses what representation is about. At least watch that so that you know why it's very important to show up, to put face, to put humanity into what you do. And when it comes to embracing who you are, I want to recommend a novel by a South African. It's called You Have to Be Gay to Know God. You have to be gay to know God. Kumalo is his name. And why I am recommending that book is because it documented his journey through church, through, all these conversations that we're having, and how he helped himself out of that and is advocating for the rights of LGBTQIA plus people. It's a very affirming book in that sense, and I hope you can get a copy of that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. Any other comments? All right, thank you so much, everyone. I'm not much of a talker. I will just say I'm happy you are here, and I'm happy you stayed back. And thank you for all you do in representing the queer community in Nigeria. And I do hope that we keep moving forward stronger, collaboratively, without biting each other, like the politicians do, and fight with tribe, ethnicity, and all of those things. I hope that we get to be unified. Someone once says that maybe we should build a queer country where all the queer people will just have their own law, enjoy themselves. So maybe we have that kind of country in future. And please have refreshment. Sorry you couldn't drink here because they actually don't allow anybody to take any drink in the theater. Please go outside, have drinks, stay behind if you can, and let's just celebrate Pride. Thank you so much, everyone.
for this year. And we have been able to have a monumental win to repeal part of the SNPA. We are able to finally hold something like this without any legal regulations, which means that anyone who wants to hold a party or anything that is either pride or non-pride should not be held back by the government or any other state actor or anyone else. So that's a great way, and that's why we are able to do this today. So thank you again for coming. Thank you. So like I said, sections 4.2 and 5, 2 and 5 have been repealed, and we can do it. Amen. I can do it without anybody coming to harass us, without any grounds for anyone coming to tell us that what we are doing is wrong or not, because we are right, we are here, and we are speaking clear. Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you very much, Damola. Please, can we give a round of applause, please? You guys are done. You guys are done. What is this? Can we give a round of applause, please? Okay, up next, we have our first performer in the person of Manuel Hart, and he will be singing Higher by Terms. Manuel Hart, can we have you, please? Please clap for him as he comes. Well, they should know where it's going. Okay, so our performer will come back. Yeah, our performer will come back. So let's do a quick exercise while we're waiting for our performer. So I need 5 volunteers. If nobody comes out, I'll pick myself. I need 5 volunteers. 5 beautiful, gorgeous people. I'll count to 5, then I'll pick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Okay, should we close the party? You are tired. Oh, yeah, come on, go home. Come on, go home. I need 5 volunteers, please. You will know, just come. We have 1. We need 4 more. We need 4 more volunteers. We need 3 more. We need 2 more. From this side, anybody?
Where's JD? I was saying that
we need 2 more.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
One more person. We need 1 more person to proceed. Okay. I presume these are the 5 most gorgeous people in this party. Yes. Shade to this side. Okay. So this is very easy and might be a bit messy. Mike, don't worry. We have an award for you, for the winner. Yeah. So it's very easy. I will tell you an item. You go to the crowd and look for it. Very easy. Very, very easy. The winner gets something. Alrighty. The first item is Okay, there's a cake behind. So please be careful. Alrighty. The first item tennis. Take it, best night tennis. A pair of shoes. I tell you, a pair of shoes. First one. Okay, okay, raise one to God. Let me see. Sweetheart, come. Don't be ashamed. Bring it up. So we do it together. Is this a pair of shoes? 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 This? Okay. So what do you suggest we do to this school? Should we